Listen up, folks.
I didn't expect a fictional video game cowboy to shatter my sense of self. Yet there I was, sitting in front of my screen, watching a digital man who rides a digital horse in a digital world take one final glimpse at the sun as it rose in the east while the man died. And I'm crying, like actual tears are coming down my actual face as I watch all of this unfold. And yeah, I'm sad that this character I've been spending the past several weeks with has died, but I've saved previous versions of the game, and I know I can return to being Arthur Morgan anytime I want to. But I'm crying because as I play through this entire game, I now realize that I too will meet a similar fate in the not that distant future. Arthur Morgan's journey forced me to confront my own choices, and suddenly his existential crisis felt like it was echoing through my own life. And I can't imagine that I am the only person that feels that way.
I'm worried my path is coming to an end, Mr. Swanson.
We have all made mistakes over the years, Hosea. Every last one of us.
So, no regrets?
Regrets for what?
We ain't your idea of charity. Is that clear?
Thomas!
What are you looking at?
Thomas!
I said what you looking at, woman.
My husband isn't well. If we could just have more...
Like I said, we ain't nobody's idea of charity. Get us the money. Go to your family. Arthur, get the hell out of here and be a goddamn man. You're my brother. I know.
You lived your life like a man, Arthur, and you turned into a good man. If we were all like you, things might have turned out differently.
You're getting mighty sentimental, Reverend.
So recently, I suffered an injury while working my regular job. Oh, ow. Yeah, while moving the cattle one morning, I actually fell into a woodchuck hole, and I broke my big toe.
Mister, you don't look so good. Let's get you to a doctor.
As far as injuries go, it really wasn't that bad, and it could have been much, much worse, and I was probably pretty lucky that I only got away with just a big toe. But at the very same time, that broken big toe was creating some big problems for me because it meant that I had to stay off my feet as much as possible and give my body a chance to rest and to heal.
It's the lumbago. If I overdo it, I'll get a relapse. It's very serious.
And for a person like me, that is not a really natural state to be. Particularly around the farm, I'm always doing stuff, building stuff, working with animals, walking around, trying to move stuff. All of my day-to-day is constantly requiring me to be on my feet doing stuff, particularly outside. And so I knew that the doctor's orders of staying off my feet were going to be rather difficult for me. But I was also going through a bit of depression from the whole experience, too. And so even though I had things that I could do, I wanted to do absolutely nothing.
Well, I ain't too proud to do nothing.
And so basically, that's what I opted to do. And if I had to step back and list for you guys, like, what are my all-time favorite, like, not do anything type of activities that I could do, the number one thing I love to do when I'm not doing anything is actually play video games.
Play a video game.
Over the years, I've gone through fits and starts of, like, not even playing any video games whatsoever because I can find them to be such a terrible, total waste of time. And in fact, if I go back about 6 years ago to the fall of 2018, when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, I actually made the following statement.
I am not going to buy Red Dead Redemption 2. I know that the minute I buy that game and start playing, oh man, the wheels are gonna come off.
Yeah, at that time in my life, I had just moved up to the farm. I was just in the process of starting up the farm. I was also in the process of trying to start like a YouTube channel, and I had to work a full-time job. The idea of trying to get sucked into a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 when it first came out, like, I knew that that would make me fail all of my hopes and dreams and goals.
I'll waste an incredible amount of time. I'll fall behind with things around the farm here. I won't spend as much time with my wife. I'll become less creative. It'll fall apart for me.
and it would really not be a healthy thing because I have trouble with moderation.
I got some jelly beans. You like jelly beans?
And so I made the very mature choice to not play Red Dead Redemption 2 because I knew that it was probably for the best.
We have to stick with the plan.
What plan? What goddamn plan, Dutch?
Now, oftentimes in my life, when I feel like things aren't going well and I feel rather unhappy, I find myself asking the question, am I unhappy because things are not going well, or are things not going well because I'm unhappy? And over the last couple of months, I have been struggling with this question a lot lately, and I've been feeling like things have not been going well, and I've been kind of unhappy. And even before I broke my toe, I was starting to feel like something was kind of off. And so as I was reaching a low point with that broken toe and feeling like things were off, in a stunning display of poor judgment, I decided that the best possible thing I could do while injured would be to download the game Red Dead Redemption 2, dust off my old PlayStation 4, and finally now, 6 years after the game's release, give it a whirl.
So you like the new camp, Jack?
Sure. It's fine.
It'll do us for now.
And as I said at the beginning of this video, the game absolutely rocked me, and I do believe it triggered a midlife crisis for me.
You ugly bastard. You're getting old. Old and kind of sad. No wonder they all leave you. You sour-faced idiot. You ain't fooling no one.
Leave the fool alone. People been leaving me alone for the last 10 years. I'm bored with being left alone.
You know, you and me, we're more ghosts than people. But them, they could...
I know.
You know, in the pilot episode of the Sopranos TV series, Tony Soprano, in his first therapy session with Dr. Melfi, he really makes this point about the fact that it's good to get in from the ground up.
The morning of the day I got sick, I've been thinking. It's good to be in something from the ground floor. I came too late for that. I know. But lately I'm getting the feeling that I came in at the end. The best is over.
Many Americans, I think, feel that way.
And for a mob boss in the late 90s and early 2000s, that's a sentiment that I think could be understandable. But I also don't think that the sentiment's all that unique, because if you look at it, pretty much any generation since the dawn of time has looked backward at previous generations and felt like those previous generations had it better and they were at a better time. And even if you think about like the American West, the Western expansion and the lives of cowboys and like all of that mythos that is so baked into American culture, the actual time period when all of that stuff happened was relatively narrow. Whether it be a dime store novel or a radio play or a matinee or a TV show that's serialized or even a video game, each of these pieces of media that are glamorizing the old American West are always looking backward and hearkening at a better, simpler, more interesting time than the one that we have today. But what I think is really interesting about the Red Dead Redemption series, both 1 and 2, they're both video games that are set at the tail end of that Old West era, arguably even after that era has passed. And they really are stories about the end of the Old West.
If we let Jack and the women free, well then maybe we can...
freedom for no one in this country no more, Arthur.
Yes, pretty much from the dawn of their invention, Westerns have been nostalgia porn. And for anybody who's ever scrolled through the internet feed of somebody over the age of 30, you know that nostalgia rules our brains and drives 90% of the things that we think about in our spare time.
Hey, remember Ghostbusters? Oh, I remember. Remember Slimy?
Even this video preys upon your very nostalgia to get you to watch it by talking about a video game from 6 years ago.
I'm not sure what skibbity means, but hey, listen, I hope you're having a skibbity day.
I think that the fixation on nostalgia within the context of the American West reveals a cultural craving for simplicity and self-determination. Westerns evoke a time when survival hinged on one's own skill and society's rules were straightforward. These narratives allow audiences to imagine a world where their choices directly influence their fate, unlike the complexities and ambiguities of our modern lives. The frontier then becomes a metaphor for both opportunity and the loss of it. As players explore the vast wilderness and navigate moral dilemmas, the game mirrors the nostalgia often associated with the old American West. Yet the game also critiques this nostalgia, revealing the brutality, impermanence, and personal costs of living in that faded era. The deeper one goes into the game, the more the world feels claustrophobic and like it's closing in, reflecting that perceived decline of freedom that was felt by many people in the old American West.
Okay, there she is. A real city. The future.
Which just might be the best possible metaphor for what it feels like to be middle-aged.
So this is what a midlife crisis looks like?
And I know it's kind of paradoxical that people might feel nostalgia for times when they never lived through those times. This occurs regularly when people long for a romanticized past constructed from stories, media, and collective memory rather than their own personal experiences. Because the experience of the true Wild West was probably pretty awful.
God rest the souls of that poor family.
Amen.
And pussy's half price next 15 minutes.
And nobody alive today actually lived through the late 1800s, yet many people still feel connections to the imagery and ideals of that time. And even the phenomena of feeling nostalgic for a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, which itself taps into nostalgia for the American West.
Meta-nostalgia.
When players look back at Red Dead Redemption 2 years later, they don't just recall the game's story, they also recall their own experiences playing it, intertwined with the emotions and wonder they felt at that time. This creates a kind of meta-nostalgia where people long for both the imagined past portrayed in the game and their recent past in exploring that fictional world. And in case anyone out there is wondering, the older you get, the more this phenomenon will happen to you, and it won't just be with video games.
Nostalgia is truly one of the great human weaknesses, second only to the neck.
Hey, I ain't had time to ask. What really went down back there on that boat?
We missed you. That's what happened. Come on. Oh.
That first morning when I finished my farm chores and came back inside and knew I had a day of basically just sitting on my bum, I decided to fire up the game and start playing. And I gotta say, I got sucked in almost immediately. Picking up the controller and strapping in and becoming Arthur Morgan, it was like just, I don't know, coming back home to something that was very familiar. And what I love about Red Dead Redemption is the fact that there are no like right or wrong answers to the game. Like there's no good way to play or bad way to play. Like you can be a bad person and you get negative honor points, but there's actually some glory in trying to see how low you can stoop. Or you can be a good person and try to get those good high honor points and, you know, do good deeds.
Can I hold you a second, mister? Can I? Okay, just quickly. That felt good.
But either way, you have the choice to try to answer the question of, am I a good man or am I a bad man? And this is a theme that's not just unique to Red Dead Redemption 2, this was part of Red Dead Redemption 1. But I think to me, the thing that makes the biggest difference is the fact that when you are Arthur Morgan, you're a character who ultimately contracts fatal tuberculosis. And you start to realize that you're dying and you see that your time on Earth is shortening. And so much of the story and the plot of this video game is rooted in this idea of, are you a good man or a bad man? And can bad men become good men? And can they make good choices and make a difference in this world?
What am I gonna do now?
Be grateful that for the first time, you see your life clearly.
Sure.
Perhaps you could help somebody. Helping makes you really happy.
But I still don't believe in nothing.
Often, neither do I. But then I meet someone like you, and everything makes sense.
You're too smart for me, sister. I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
And as I sat here playing through the game, I started to realize that there's a lot of truth not just in what that means for the world of the game and what the game is going to actually look like for you. That's also not all that different from the real world that we live in.
Ain't my fault about the way the world is.
Like, the world we live in is shaped by our own actions, and whether we're a good person or a bad person, whether we focus our energies in selfish and harmful ways, or we put our energy towards helping people and making a difference, that impacts the world that we're living in, and that impacts how we're feeling. And for me, as I sat here playing this game, wow, it hit me like a ton of bricks. The reason I was identifying so strongly with Arthur Morgan is the fact that I feel like I have similar choices to make, and no, I'm not out there murdering people, and no, I'm not out there robbing trains. But I'm also starting to feel like, as a guy in my mid-40s, I'm realizing that I'm at the halfway point, if not past the halfway point of my life, and I don't think I've done enough to make a difference in this world and make this world a better place. And I can actually see that window closing of my ability to impact things and make a difference. And so that question of, am I a good man or am I a bad man, definitely relates to how I play a video game, but it also just relates to how I feel like I'm seeing myself and living my life. And within Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur knows his time is limited. Once his diagnosis hits, everything changes. He realizes the legacy he leaves behind is no longer in the abstract. It's real, and it's finite.
Here's some money. You take it and get out of here and start a new life somewhere. I hear Tahiti's nice.
Thank you.
Just hop on a train to Saint Denis, jump on a boat, but avoid Guam.
Where?
Forget about it.
And for those of you guys who are not familiar with Red Dead Redemption 2, I just want to take a minute and give you a bit of backstory, because I think this is important for you to know to understand where this video is going. In the game, Arthur is part of a band of criminals out in the West, and they're on the run from the law. They keep doing all sorts of criminal stuff, and they just had this bank robbery in Blackwater go horribly wrong, and so they're on the run. And while they're on the run, though, they're still doing their criminal enterprises, and at one point working for a loan shark, Arthur ends up beating up a guy with tuberculosis, and as a result of interacting with this guy, he catches tuberculosis, and at first you notice like Arthur just will occasionally cough, but then the coughing gets worse, and eventually he has this like coughing spell and is taken to the doctor, and the doctor checks him out and tells him that he has tuberculosis and he's going to die. And it's really at this point that Arthur's internal battle becomes stronger. He starts to realize that with his own mortality, he has some forced choices he's going to have to make. The entire third act of the game is centered on Arthur making choices and making decisions in an effort to try to make the world a better place and help other people. Now, to the extent that you have your own personal Arthur character go is determined by you, the player, and it actually makes all sorts of different scenes in the video game change, and like the ending changes just based on how you played it and whether you tried to really help everybody you possibly could, or whether you focused on still being a criminal and making as much money as possible. Like, you actually see those choices show up in how the game concludes.
Here's what Arthur's grave looks like if he dies with high honor. Pretty, right? And here's what Arthur's grave looks like if he dies with low honor. Not so pretty, and it's got a mangy coyote hanging around. What you doing, boy?
And it really is a game about a man trying to decide how he wants to live his life with the time that he has left. Which probably isn't as catchy a logline as Grand Theft Auto with horses, but that is definitely how I personally have come to think of the game.
I gave you all I had. I did. But I tried. In the end, I did.
Can I borrow a feeling? Could you lend me a jar of love?
Oftentimes in popular culture and media, the concept of a midlife crisis is like almost something that people make fun of, and it's like a joke.
You know what will go good with that midlife crisis is an earring, or maybe a Mazda Miata.
And it dredges up this ridiculous image and stereotype of some 40-something-year-old dude in tight leather clothing who is driving a convertible and dating a 20-year-old. And I guess those are all things that some people who have midlife crises do. But I think the more significant thing that happens for most folks who are undergoing a sense of midlife crisis and reckoning with who they are and what their purpose is when they hit that middle age period, somewhere past 30, but probably before 50, when they're hitting that point, they really are trying to reckon with what is life all about, what is their purpose, and what sort of mark do they want to make on the world, if any.
You're a good man, Mr. Morgan, but I fear this task to be a fool's errand.
Well, firstly, I'm a long way from a good man. Secondly, fool's errands are my favorite kind of work.
When you're a kid, you're wondering what do you want to be when you grow up, and when you're like a young adult, you're grappling with how do you make a difference in this world and how do you find your place. And while the growth of your life has always been on this upward trajectory, you suddenly hit this point where you realize you've hit a peak. And it's not a rapid decline, and it might even be a plateau, but you also notice that there is this decline that's happening. Like you can't go out for beers with folks the night before without waking up with a crippling hangover the next day. Or maybe after doing a day of yard work, that next day you really wake up feeling all beaten up.
I'm either halfway through a healthy life or almost done with a not so healthy life. And I won't know which one is until it's all over. I'm middle-aged.
Or even if you just start to look around at the world and say, why does everybody look so young suddenly? When you realize that like a college-age person isn't what you think of a college-age person looking like, and they look so incredibly young, and how can that even be possible? Because you never stop thinking about yourself feeling like you're like, I don't know, in your own early 20s. College is not that long ago. I mean, I do it. I still feel like college was just yesterday, even though I graduated from college at this point pretty much 22 years ago, and my college graduation is basically, for where I am right now, the halfway point of my life.
It took me back to my days in college.
Is there any purpose to this conversation, Reverend?
If you're in your 20s listening to me ramble right now, please take note that the next 20 years of your life are going to go by probably 5 or 10 times faster than the first 20 years of your life, and there is nothing you can do about it, and it creeps up on you awful quick. You know, you're trying to build a career, you're trying to find a spouse or some sort of life partner, you're trying to raise children. Like, you've got so many of these potential major life changes that you're trying to tackle that they take your attention and focus away from thinking about where you are and where your trajectory is.
You really think that that'll draw attention away from us?
But at a certain point, you're going to stop and reflect and say, what kind of world am I creating? And what sort of life am I leading? And am I leading it as authentically as I possibly can? And if not, what do I need to do to change it so that the rest of this life doesn't brush by as quickly as the first half of this life has gone through? And how do I make the most of what I've got with the time I've got left?
What's the urgency? We need to leave forever. We've been doing well, making money, but for us all to leave together, we need enough for a boat. Now, I found a friendly ship captain. He's willing to take us to Australia or Tahiti.
Well, where the hell is Tahiti?
South Pacific, an untouched paradise.
Who lives there?
Tahitians, I guess.
Throughout the game of Red Dead Redemption 2, Dutch Vanderlyn, who is like the father figure for Arthur.
Ooh, oh, oh, oh. I love you, Dutch, but please fix those plans.
And the leader of the gang.
Vanderlyn, I'm always by your side. Poker plans. I've got a plan, Arthur.
Dutch is constantly talking about this dream of going to Tahiti.
We're gonna get a boat, we're gonna get on a river, and we're gonna go north. Then Tahiti, dancing girls, freedom. But first we have to make a whole lot of smoke. One score and one whole hell of a lot of noise.
He's always saying that the gang is just one big score away from being able to go off and move to Tahiti and eat mangoes and have a farm and live this happy, perfect life.
This is the last job that we are ever going to pull. Before the year is out, we are going to be harvesting mangoes in Tahiti.
And for me, as I played the game, the echoes of the idea of Tahiti became eerily familiar. Like, I can think of so many different times in my life when I was just one big score away from being able to realize the dream of Tahiti. Maybe it was a different job. Maybe it was convincing this one girl to go out with me. Maybe it was buying a home or moving to a farm. Like, all of these things were at various points in my life like my Tahiti. To give you a very concrete and tangible example, the career I have now is essentially a second career. I mean, you could even argue that right now the midlife crisis I'm going through is a second midlife crisis. And that career was all about making more money and doing cooler things and having a bigger, more prestigious title. Like, each time I was always chasing that thing. And it was always like, oh, once I get this job, I'm going to be really set, and that's where I'm going to find my happiness. And that's when I'm going to finally be in Tahiti. But much like I've spoiled the plot for the game for most people who've never played, let me spoil that concept for you guys who've never quite been able to experience those things. Even if you get there, there's always going to be one more thing you want to do or one more other thing you're chasing after, and you will never, ever, ever get to Tahiti. And in fact, you're probably going to end up stuck on Guarma.
We was headed to Tahiti.
You was going to scenic route.
And the really sad part about all of this is you often put so much energy and attention in chasing Tahiti that you never, ever stop and appreciate where you're at. Like, for those of you guys who've played Red Dead Redemption 2, I think you're going to understand what I'm saying here, where arguably the best, like, camp experience that you can have in terms of hanging out with the gang and little side quests with the gang and spending time with the gang, like, all of the best stuff happens in Chapter 2 of the game.
Dude, now what is that? Saucing around like a pussycat. Got a hole in the middle that's split in two. That's what you call ring-dang-do.
And at the same time, you as the player, you're so constantly rushing through the game to get to the next chapter and find out what happens next. And as you get to later chapters, when the dynamic at camp gets really toxic and everybody's mad at everybody and everybody's really scared and it just seems like chaotic and sad.
But ever since Michael ran on me, I started coughing because I've got TB. I'm dying of TB, and Dutch is not near me. I'm all on my own.
Like, you think back to Chapter 2 and the Chapter 2 camp and how awesome everything was, and you get sad and nostalgic and you miss it and you miss that dynamic.
And that's what they call ring-dang-do. You're a dirty man.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you absolutely didn't appreciate it nearly as much as you could have or should have because you were so focused on getting to the next thing.
Oh.
Are you in here, Lenny?
But the beauty, the joy, the magic of so many of these things in our day-to-day lives that we experience are within that day-to-day. And if you're so focused on trying to get that last big score, and you're so focused on trying to get you and the rest of the gang to Tahiti, you're gonna wake up one day and realize that number one, pretty much all of the gang except for Uncle have left you, And for the rest of your life, you're going to put so much energy towards wishing that you were back there where you were at chapter 2 with all of those people that you loved and cared about and you didn't appreciate at the time. And I don't say this saying that you need to be any different or do things differently than I have, but I say this just hoping that somebody out there is watching this absolutely bizarre video essay and hearing what I'm saying and taking a moment and appreciating the people that they have and the life that they have at this very minute.
Is it too late for us, Arthur?
I can't lie to you. I'm a wanted man, Mary. If anyone close to me, well, they're wanted too, and I can't have you wrapped up in there. But it's coming to an end. This time it really is.
Run away with me, Arthur. Run away right now and don't look back.
I want to. More than anything, I want to. But I've got some people I need to take care of. Once they're free, then I'm free. Then I can disappear.
But Arthur...
If we're gonna run away anywhere, we need money. Soon, I'll have some.
I know you won't run away. But it's a pretty dream.
And that's not to say that there aren't awful parts about your day-to-day life. But I will also warn you that there will be a point in time when you will miss what you have and be nostalgic for what it was. And there is no magic you can ever perform that will ever bring you back. You have no save game that you can just go reload to go play chapter 2 again. Once that's gone, it's gone. And you got to keep moving forward. So if you spend too much time focused on Tahiti, you're going to miss what's happening right there in camp.
Mr. Arthur, I told Dutch, I feel I should tell you. I saw some of Combs' boys riding around.
Down here? What they want?
I have no idea.
They see you?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me know, Kieran.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
What the hell have they done to me?
One of the funny things that I noticed in terms of how I played it through the first time was that, you know, I spent so much of my time and energy on trying to make money, like trying to get every animal skin I possibly could to get a couple of dollars, spending hours robbing trains and holding up banks just in the hope of being able to just get more money. And by the end of the game, money doesn't matter at all. Like, you will have all of the supplies you ever need. You will have all of the guns you ever need. The only thing you can really do with the money is upgrade your guns and buy different clothing.
I'm talking new guns and new clothes. Going to cabaret shows, mowing down all my foes.
Buy different digital clothing for your digital person to make them look digitally cooler for some reason, but overall doesn't really impact your experience in the game. In fact, I found that some of the townspeople would make fun of me on a regular basis for wearing clothing that I got from the trapper that probably took me, 6 or 7 hours to earn the ability to craft that clothing.
You look ridiculous, Arthur.
You got funny clothes, Uncle Arthur.
What in blazes are you wearing?
Interesting choice of outfit, Arthur.
That is a peculiar outfit, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, it's just kind of dumb and pointless. And again, it's almost another example of what happens when you chase after Tahiti.
Now, don't you tell me you don't remember me, because I sure as heck fire remember you.
Not a chance.
Come on, buddy. Case Western High. Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show. Bing! Ned Ryerson. I dated your sister Mary Pat a couple times till you told me not to anymore.
Ned Ryerson?
Bing! Phil? Hey, Phil Connors.
Ned?
You know, one of the uniquely incredible things about video games is the fact that you can take virtually the same exact moment and play it over and over and over again. And you can keep getting better and better at it, and you can keep doing it just slightly better, or you can keep doing it differently, and you can experience all permutations of it, as long as you have the patience to keep going back there and keep redoing it. And so much like Bill Murray's character in the movie Groundhog's Day, you can just keep doing it any way you'd like, and you can eventually get really, really good at it. So you're at the point where when you're like living it perfectly. And that's kind of nice and that's kind of fun, but it also can become a weight, and it can also make playing certain video games completely unbearable. But after a while, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you keep getting better and better at it, and it keeps like getting easier for you to do, and it stops presenting the same challenge, you will find that you get bored. That's true for real life too. I think about my life here on the farm, and while I can often have new challenges and new experiences that can change things for me, and while it can be fun to keep reliving that same moment over and over again, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again for too long, eventually you're going to get bored and it's going to lose its novelty, and you're going to become frustrated and depressed. That's true for real life, and that is true for Red Dead Redemption 2. And eventually you will get to a point where you've beaten the entire game, and you've beaten every side quest and met every side character, and you've got every hunting achievement, you've got every horse achievement. You might even be so dumb and patient that you get all the gambling achievements. You can do all of these things. But absolutely nothing is going to be as fun and exciting as that very first time and that first playthrough.
Chase me! Come on! This way! Shoot up, or then you can catch me!
As I sit here in my own midlife crisis right now, I'm realizing that might be just a little bit of my problem.
I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. I don't think. I didn't just survive a wreck. I wasn't just blown up yesterday. I have been stabbed, shot, poisoned, frozen, hung, electrocuted, and burned.
Oh, really?
And every morning I wake up without a scratch on me, not a dent in the fender. I am an immortal.
Although it's comfortable to keep playing the same thing over and over again, it can also be limiting. And being willing to take new risks and have to sit through some god-awful tutorial to play some sort of new game, it might actually be the thing you have to do in your life to find continued happiness. Even if that thing made you happy at one point, if you keep doing it over and over again the same exact way, even though you've gotten really good at it, it's not going to be nearly as fun.
You know, a long time ago, I was like you.
I very much doubt that.
Oh, no, I did terrible things, awful things. And I could not stop doing terrible things because I did not believe that goodness existed. And then one day, I saw that love did exist. And ever since then, doing bad things became, well, not impossible, but ridiculous.
I guess I'm just hoping for a dignified exit.
Hearts are rarely pure, but equally they are rarely impure either. To me, God is people and people are God. So we must all do what we can.
Arthur Morgan's realization that even though he can't change the past and change the man who he was, yet he can change what he does going forward and who he helps and how he makes a difference. That realization, while on the surface it might seem extremely simple, for me personally, playing through the game, I found it incredibly profound. As I look back on my own life, I see so many mistakes, and while I'm happy with some of the things I've done and some parts of the person I am, there's also other parts that I'm really unhappy and still torture myself about who I am and what I've done to this very day. And you know, honestly, it was sitting here playing Red Dead Redemption 2 that I actually started to come to terms with some of those things.
I've lived a bad life, sister.
We've all lived bad lives, Mr. Morgan. We all sin. But I know you.
You don't know me.
Forgive me, but that's the problem. You don't know you.
And when I think about some of the advice that the game gives you in the form of a cutscene...
What am I gonna do now?
Be grateful that for the first time, you see your life clearly.
Sure.
Perhaps you could help somebody. Helping makes you really happy.
And it really had me shook. And you know, when you look at Arthur Morgan in his transformation, where he goes from being this loyal follower of Dutch and somebody who's willing to just do whatever Dutch says because that's what he thinks is best, and willing to just kind of go along because that's what his role is and that's what his place is, versus being the guy to take a stand and do the thing that he thinks is right.
All of you pick your side now because this is over. Oh, them years, Dutch.
And put himself as sacrifice for improving that situation for other people.
Take this. And this. And get out of here. I'll see you around, John Marston. Be safe.
When you see the power of what that does, despite the awful stuff that Arthur has done over the course of his life, it made me really think about this fact that, yeah, if a cold-blooded killer can find the strength to do the right thing and change who he is, well, why can't I keep pushing myself to do better and help more people and make a bigger difference? Please let me tell you that if you're willing to look at it and embrace those feelings that you have and actually try to change yourself, it can make you feel pretty gosh darn wonderful too.
Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
All aboard? I shall try.
I know you will. Goodbye, Mr. Morgan. Goodbye.
Sister?
End a game with such a strong emotional conclusion? How can we ever build upon something like that in the epilogue?
Oh, don't worry about that, love. Leave it to me. I got the perfect idea.
Scooping up poo, scooping up poo. I'm John Marston and I'm scooping up poo.
One of the best and most satisfying things about playing Red Dead Redemption 2 is just the sense that you're in this living, breathing world. And I think what's oftentimes for many people so cool about open world games is the fact that you can build this world for you to experience where you don't necessarily have the consequences or challenges of your day-to-day life or the real world. And it's just incredibly liberating to be able to play and be someone else. And that experience gives you a chance to step away from the problems of the real world. The only problem is that when you get done playing and you have to go back to the real world, all of those still same problems exist. And sometimes if you're so focused on playing in that artificial world, you're going to find that it actually creates even more real-world problems for you.
I'm just a lazy piece of crap who wastes his entire life playing video games. Yeah, a lazy piece of video game playing crap. That's me! That's me!
When I think back to my life when I was playing Red Dead Redemption 1, it was actually... I had just moved to New York City and I had a new job, and my wife was actually living in another city. We were engaged at the time and she was going to grad school. And so I was in a new city, kind of by myself. Going home and playing Red Dead Redemption was like this retreat for me that let me escape into a fantasy world where I got to interact with this magical place that was so unlike living in New York City. But then at the same time, as I think about my life, particularly over the last 6 years since I moved to this farm in Vermont, one of the really cool things I've gotten to experience is I get to actually live out here in the physical world, a physical world that actually looks a lot like the world in Red Dead Redemption 2. Actually, that's total bullcrap. Farm life is nothing like Red Dead Redemption 2. There is something magical and powerful that happens to you as a human when you interact with that physical world. And to me, one of the more interesting things about Red Dead Redemption 2 is the fact that that physical world is both a remarkably similar reproduction of the real physical world, but then at the same time, it's actually almost laughably simple. And what I hope for a lot of folks out there who are not regularly experiencing the natural world, that your experiences in Red Dead Redemption 2 actually motivate you to want to get more experience with that physical world and be out there in the real world, because you're going to see some very magical things out there.
Let me have a rule and a saw and a board and I'll cut it. I'll climb up a ladder with a hammer and a nail and I'll nail it.
But also be forewarned that it can be some pretty boring drudgery too.
Know much about fence building?
Not really.
Can't build a fence, can't milk a cow, ain't used to shoveling shits, but took on a gang of robbers single-handed.
Guess we all got our peculiarities, Mr. Dickens.
You know, like if you look out there on commentaries and people reviewing Red Dead Redemption 2 and you like look at Reddit forums and discussions, one of the things that people constantly joke about is how awful a lot of the epilogue is. And you like have all of this time as John Marston doing lots of boring things like literally scooping up poop and milking cattle and like doing all of this stuff on his little farm where he's trying to build a life for himself. A lot of people will pick on it and say it's just really boring video game play and why'd they even leave this in here. But to me, I think it's an absolute stroke of brilliance on the part of the game developers to have that, because it really does two things. Number one, and as a person who is a farmer who has to do lots of boring drudgery type tasks around the farm on a daily basis to take care of my animals, like I guess I just sort of felt seen by a lot of that stuff. And yeah, it is boring and it is drudgery, but without doing those tasks, you wouldn't be able to have the animals that bring you joy and to have a farm that brings you joy. And so it's a necessary part of life. But I also think that the developer's choice to include that in the game is an incredible commentary, because effectively, when you're just working those like homestead farm missions and you're hanging out with Charles and Uncle and you're building the homestead and you're like living this very slow, tedious, boring life and like playing this very slow, tedious, boring video game, you're actually living the life that Arthur Morgan hoped John Marston would have. You're actually going out there and like doing the things that a normal person who is not being a violent criminal is actually doing. And you're seeing just how dull and boring it can be. But I also challenge people to play it and find the beauty in it. Like, just spend a couple of days as John Marston doing farm chores. You know, you can actually even make money by, like, doing the farm chores. Like, and so, in theory, somebody could, like, play the entire rest of this game as John Marston for years and years and years, just kind of living his life with his son and his wife and his farm, and just, you could survive that way.
Until the end of Red Dead Redemption 1!
But I can confidently say that nobody ever plays that way for anything more than a joke. Because it's boring, and video games need action. And at that point in the game, there's nothing you crave more than going bounty hunting with Sadie Adler, or going out there to go find Micah and kill that rat bastard. Like, by the time those things happen in the game, you as the player have just undergone so much boredom playing this game that you finally get like a jolt of excitement and you're ready to go and you've got that fresh bloodlust. And all of those important lessons that you learned as Arthur Morgan about trying to make the world a better place and trying to do things differently, like, they might have sort of sticked, but you're back to shooting everybody you possibly can. Because you know that John Marston has his own redemption story, and you don't even have to experience that unless you, like, played Red Dead Redemption 1 again. But for me personally, I don't often play as John Marston. Like, by the time I get to that point in the game, I've kind of almost given up, and I almost have the itching to go back and, like, replay the game or pick up the game back in Chapter 2 again. Because that transformation that Arthur Morgan goes through is just powerful. And it has me wondering how to make a transformation like that amongst myself in a meaningful way in terms of how I live my life. You know, as I've said, much like Arthur, I've done good things in my life and I've also done bad things in my life. And I do believe that I'm more than the sum of my deeds, and I do believe that just because I've done something bad doesn't mean I can't do something good. But I'm just kind of wondering, what does that good need to be, and how will I be remembered before I end up going off to that great big gun battle in the sky?
Yeah, get out of here.
I know I say this in pretty much every video I make. This has been kind of a different video. If you want to learn more about my farm as well as why nobody actually lives off the land, I will leave this video right here for you. Or if you're in the mood for a good story, you should check out this video over here, which talks about some of my high school days and some of the less than good things I have done in my past. Thanks for watching, everybody.